What is up, guys? Clay Enjoyer here, and it's time to enjoy. And in this video, I'm making a government-inspired Decepticon. And before we get too far in the video, I just want to say that my mental health is completely fine, and I have never had any problems with myself. AKA, the government better not come after me. Before then, building up the base of the inspired Decepticon, which is just a camera with a cat-like body, which is pretty easy to explain, but of course, if there was no words explaining over it, then you guys might get too bored. Because, of course, all my slip-ups and not knowing what words to say at the right time is definitely interesting and never gets repetitive, before then adding extra details onto the camera and holding the sculpture off camera, but technically the camera on the cat, not the camera this one, before then making extra details on the neck/spine area, because again, I'm not really sure what I'm doing, I'm just making a robot. Now I can add the final details to the spine, and then I can start working on the giant camera light, which is necessary for all imposing cameras, or at least every single camera that I've ever seen ever, before then blending it in and testing it with a light. Because again, if it's just a light, then why would I even bother with wiring? And this definitely doesn't come back to bite me in the rear, but it's okay because I'll figure out an okay solution and an okay explanation before then building up the legs and the tail, because of course, if this is Decepticon, usually they are pretty bulky, and I guess that's what I'm working on too, because the cat keeps sagging, and I do not want this cat to just be laying down on the ground. I want this cat to have an actual pose. And like all my projects before, including this one, planning is more of a secondary idea, so I really should have built up the skeleton before, but I didn't. So when I added a little bit more clay to balance out the camera and make the light look not so big in comparison to the camera, it was starting to fall. So I had to put a little bit of clay right in that neck hole to try and keep it up and keep it from falling, even though that wasn't that successful, but I did end up putting a lot more clay on the back of the tail as well, followed by balls for the joints, which definitely did help a little bit, but it also was a bit awkward because again, I'm trying to make this look like a realistic robot, and even though giant balls for shoulders and where the elbows would be probably isn't realistic, but I was just going after what looks like robot texture, followed by some spring coil things. Again, I have no idea what I'm doing for this sculpture, and I have no plan. And I was going through several iterations, but I figured this would be the quickest one because I don't feel like making knee or elbow joints, just shoulder joints. If the government wanted this Decepticon, they would need some armor to protect it and to help it ram through protesters. So I need to add some metal plates around all four legs, including the tail, because I need to add some extra detail, followed by doing the same technique on the tail, just wrapping it in one continuous strand instead of two separate ones, followed by additional plates on each side, but instead of one solid plate, it's going to be multiple sections, so hopefully if this was terrifyingly realistic, or even created, then it could technically move around and it wouldn't be static. To keep up the theme of just a bunch of clay and plates everywhere, I can do the same thing with the torso, just blending in some clay on either side, kind of making it look like there's multiple sections of the abdomen, so it could also move as well, attempting to make it agile before blending in some of the bottom sections to, again, add some detail and potentially implied movement, again, if this thing was real, which, oh my goodness. But it would be a good idea because the back plate is very exposed, because that's what's going to be for the battery so the light could go in there, which is not very elegant and it's a little bit tight. But then again, this is something the government would supposedly make, and you know, the government, it just makes everything that's super high quality and not faulty at all. followed by extra details around all the plates like a little bit of trim, because these plates are looking a little too flat, and if I have anything to say about it, that's pretty boring. And for the final touch, I can add a bunch of spikes around all of the limbs, more specifically on the bottom lower sections of each leg, and a couple on the shoulders, because you know, who needs fear-mongering when you have a bunch of cool spikes? Followed by a little bit of battle damage, because I don't want this robot to be looking perfectly pristine, even though all the paint was kinda gonna hide it, but it's still a little bit of extra detail and it's fun to do. And like any good robot, it needs to be covered in silver, which I can do right now, which was definitely a little difficult because some of the spots were a little bit hard to reach because of all the little minute details that I added. But with everything painted, I can take some black and paint it on the legs and the coils to make it a little bit more detailed and a little bit more variation, trying hard to have a gradient in the middle so it looks like light is reflecting off, before then doing the same thing with the spikes, trying hard to not paint the armor section that I just painted. Followed by the same thing for the coils, because everything is looking a little bit too one-dimensional, and I want it to stand out a little bit more and just be a bit more pleasing to look at, before then painting the wires on the top red as well, because I want the wires to make a little bit more sense instead of just a single red wire, before then doing some black in the extra vent spaces and shadows to make it look a little bit better, followed by a very heavy black wash around all the joints to make it look extra good and make sure that everything is tied in together, because originally I thought the metal was too bright, but now it's all unified and it looks so much better, before then covering the light in a little bit of varnish to make it look extra dystopian, and the same thing for the camera, which I did off camera, and then messily putting the wires together because they are held together by hopes and prayers, which is supposed to mean aka how unstable the government is supposed to be, followed by making the base. And this base is more on the simpler side. It's pretty much just a banged up and broken road, starting with some sandpaper and a rectangle, instead of actually doing a circle this time, which is pretty unique for me because for some reason I've done circles for like 95% of all the other bases. But as I struggle to take the sandpaper away, it's time to paint the entire base black, which I don't know what you guys were expecting. Usually this part is at the end, but I want to add more layers of paint, starting with a bunch of different tones of gray to make it look like an asphalt road, which by the end, it's not really going to look that much like asphalt, but it's more of the spirit, followed by a bunch of different tans and browns. Said tans and browns were not filmed because it's pretty much the same as I just did right here, and I can do the same thing on the feet, because I want the base and the creature to be tied in together instead of the base and the creature looking like two separate things just randomly mashed together, but hopefully they don't, before then tearing up the road for some reason while I keep the sculpture on it instead of taking 3 seconds to move the sculpture off, because I think the road is a little too flat, and with a little bit of tearing and some hot glue action, I can then cover the base in a brown wash to tie in all the colors together before realizing that was a mistake, because I don't want this to look like a dirty road. I want this to look like a broken asphalt road because it was looking a little bit too dusty. Finally, with the road and the sculpture done, it is time for the reveal. If you aren't a corrupt politician and you'll enjoy this video, please like and subscribe for more bad government content in the future. Alright, see you in the next video. Bye.